Hi, welcome to the Ruined Keep. Today is a special session. We have DM chat. Well, I guess I'm the DM, talking to Matt, one of the players on the Ruined Keep, about how he first found Dungeons and Dragons and his experiences as a player. And I have a bunch of questions, and I'm sure Matt will come back to me with a few questions as well. And as usual, if any of you who are watching in chat want to ask a question of either of us, preferably on topic, but it doesn't really matter if it isn't, then do let us know. There's just one small tech thing I want to do while Matt, do you want to go ahead and give yourself a small introduction?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Matt, as I said, and I play Adalbert in the Ruined Keep. While we've been streaming for, I think, just over a month now. Is that right, Simon?
Yeah, we're on episode 7, so
Gosh, almost 2 months.
Yeah, almost 2 months.
We've actually been playing this campaign for over a year. And I've been playing within Simon's world for, it must be two and a half years now.
Yeah, I'm just going to put on a tiny bit of music. So, yeah, welcome to our little chat. I am going to do some fireside chats as well at some point, I think. Like, kind of nice, relaxed, like, no real purpose, just finding out about each other. Oh, hey Kevin, how's it going? We haven't really started. We're just getting all settled down. No real? What? What's that a reference to? Anyway, I'll wait to see what Kevin means by that, but yeah, so a little introduction for me personally. I've been a dungeon master for a campaign since I was about 13-14 years old, and I met Matt fairly recently and asked him to join my campaign, and here we are now on the Ruined Keep. So, some warm-up questions first. How long have you been playing D&D? Can you work that out?
Yes. I met Simon November-ish 2019. So I've been playing since then.
Yeah, I guess that's fairly accurate. That implies that he's only played in my campaign, but that's not quite true, as we'll find out.
One session that isn't your campaign.
Yeah.
And then the few I did with my friends, but yeah.
Yeah, so Kevin wants us to solve the trolley problem.
Well, later on. Depends. Is this generic trolley problem or Ruined Keep based trolley problem? Because that's probably quite easy.
Right, so, next question. What do you enjoy most about the hobby, before the pandemic and after? I think the answer is different, depending before or after.
Yeah. I'm going to start that by saying what I don't enjoy about pandemic, and that is certainly the joys of internet connections.
Yeah, it's annoying, isn't it?
Yeah, so apologies to everyone disappearing. In terms of what I enjoyed, I think pre-pandemic, it sounds odd, but I quite enjoyed having a little token, my Hero Forge figure of my character.
Oh, that was super cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Just in a sense, because it, in a sense, made the game slightly more real. In fact, that this was you, this was your character, this was who embodied. And while we have even more realistic character tokens for the our online campaign, And a huge shout out to Chris Zamar, who actually spent a very long time photoshopping and editing and making out these portraits, which is absolutely fantastic. Because I can't physically hold them, it doesn't have the same feel, which is strange. Yeah. But they're absolutely amazing. In terms of what I really like about the during pandemic, it's that this is my social life. During pandemic, we're not going out. We're being very careful. I haven't seen people for a very, very long time. And it's wonderful having a group of friends I can see, albeit virtually, every week, to kind of share what's going well, kind of ongoing concerns, and to just have a really wonderful session with.
Yeah, I think in this current time, it's even more important to make the time for these kind of hobbies, and if you can do them online, then it makes such a difference. And the thing that I found is, it's great that we can keep the game going and we can all do this online. But also, now that we've got people in chat and the tabletop RPG community sort of joining us and talking on Twitter and all those kind of things, in a way, it kind of makes you feel more in touch with people, just in general. The kind of in touch that you would get if you went to a shop regularly or went down the library or those kind of activities that we used to. So yeah, it's really nice, I think, to have this extended community as well.
I suppose as a player, the way we play hasn't really changed much in terms of kind of pre and post pandemic. Just kind of the visualization either on a tabletop mat or on the tabletop simulator. As a DM, what's, if anything, has changed the most for you in terms of playing and preparation?
I think one of the hardest things is because at work you're on Zoom a lot, depending on your job, but at our company we use Zoom a lot, which means I'm always online with people that way. And so when it comes to the session, I've already had quite a few hours in the day when I've done the same thing. And I personally find Zoom quite tiring. Like talking to people without being able to see their entire body language and without all the social cues you get from that. All the technical problems like you mentioned. The fact that you always have to think, is my microphone on or have I muted and all this kind of stuff. And I get quite a lot of energy from being with people. So I find Zoom by itself quite tiring, and then you add in like a session. That's the side of it where I don't quite get the same excitement that I would get if I was... I love that feeling of throwing all my books and folders and preparation into a rucksack and then heading off to the pub or, which is where we used to have our sessions. Yeah, Kevin. Yeah, I totally get energized by other people. I know. And I also appreciate the kind of the feeling that you want to be by yourself as well. I enjoy I enjoy socializing, but I also enjoy spending time by myself. I personally am a Zen Buddhist, so I like to meditate and have quiet time away from people as well. But I love that feeling of throwing all the stuff in my bag and going to a session. So I do miss that. And what other pastimes entertain you at the moment?
Well, at the moment, not much. I'm very fortunate in that I live ancient woodland adjacent, literally within 20, 30 feet of my front door. I'm straight into a couple of acres of protected ancient woodland with the ruins of an abbey, paths, lakes. It's absolutely wonderful. And it really has been a lifesaver during lockdown. Every day get my my permitted exercise, going out, walking and enjoying nature. Beyond that, I'm kind of some of the traits that you'll see in Adalbert. I'm a voracious reader. I read an awful lot. And then it's kind of video games. I enjoy mostly kind of RPGs like, Assassin's Creed, Skyrim, Fallout. Bethesda, I think, is an amazing studio.
Yeah, I agree.
I spent many years of my life.
Yeah, me too.
Various Bethesda games.
Yeah, I love the fact that you are into reading and playing video games. I like that kind of dichotomy. It's such a different thing, but yeah.
Well, I'd argue that it's actually quite similar. I'd say when you're reading, you're then, instead of choosing the path in the video games, you're still doing the video game playing, but it's kind of just one step removed. I'd say they're quite similar.
So, just in chat, Beluga said loves rolling physical dice. I also love rolling physical dice. It's one of the reasons why I encouraged the players in the Ruin Keep to roll their dice. And I'm not that keen on digital dice because the feeling of dice in your hand and the noise they make and that whole connection you have with your roll, it just feels like, even though it's random, you've had some effect on that roll. And it's a connection between you and the character as well, I think, in some ways. And yes, Kevin, Divinity Original Sin, I would also recommend. I think I played... Oh yeah, I've played the first one. I haven't played the second one. So if you haven't played it, Matt, I would recommend it. Divinity Original Sin is a isometric RPG with turn-based combat, which is pretty cool. It's very closely based on Dungeons and Dragons, but it's got its own sort of world and rules and things. That's pretty cool. All right, so let's get into the meat of the chat. So, when did you first hear about Dungeons and Dragons, and what did you first find out about it? Can you remember?
No. It's been, I think, as it is for many people, it's one of those games that is in the periphery for all of us. We don't know much about it, but everyone's at least heard of Dungeons and Dragons. I suppose my story is quite starts a long before I started playing D&D. Started off, with books and that form of escapism. Then when I was younger, I did a lot of Lego, and it's quite funny. I was thinking back, and I had essentially my own ruined keep. It was a female-led archaeology. Pirates is the best way I can describe it, and they went discovering all these jewels and temples I made out of Lego and pillaging them, and then kind of
so sort of Lara Croft, but a whole lot of them on a ship going to like different temples. That's quite cool.
Yeah, and they lived in a temple. I built one, kept to the side, that they turned into a base. And it's that kind of adventuring, and that led into video games, and and then it's something I wanted to play for a long time, D&D, but I'm, strange as it seems, I'm not overly social. I have a small number of friends, but they're very, very good friends, but none of them were that interested. So kind of going on, and then as with many things, my other half said, if you really want to play, just go on the internet, and I'm sure there are people out there who want to play with you. And he highlighted actually the Southwest Roleplaying group. Is that its name, Simon?
SWRPG, yes.
Which is based in Southwest London, where we used to live at the time. And I kind of went along, and then I went along to just observe 1 week, and then I went back the following week for a one-shot session, and Simon was playing with me. if I was, I believe I recall I was an Elven Ranger and you were a Dragonborn.
Barbarian.
Were you Paladin or Barbarian?
Barbarian, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
yes. Barbarian for sure. Yeah, this is how we met, Kevin.
Yeah.
It was a one shot that was organised by this community in southwest London, and the community works through Meetup, and they advertise like, "Oh, we've got this Thursday night one shot. Everyone who is interested, come along and try it out, and then you can find campaigns to join and things like that." So I turned up for a one shot. Matt had turned up for the same one shot. We were randomly placed on the tables, or we chose where to sit. I can't remember. But we ended up sitting next to each other, I think. Anyway, we were very close on the table. Yeah, we were in the same game. I think we were. Yeah. We were. I think there was somebody else on my right, and I think you were on my left. And we hit it off role playing straight away. Matt was very into his character. I was very into my character, and our two characters did not give the DM a very good time because we were just role playing when she wanted this one shot to be moving along, and she had a story obviously to tell.
I felt really bad as someone who'd never played before. I was just doing what I wanted, having fun. So I spent probably the first half an hour making everyone go fishing, and then cooking the fish and then she was like, cool. And it was great because she really didn't, and what I really appreciate, she didn't want to railroad us. So, what we said, it became part of the campaign, which is fantastic. I know that's something that Simon does as well. I mean, his is much more open than the one shot could ever be, of course.
Yeah. For sure.
But it was nice, but I felt, looking back, I feel bad at kind of, the DM and everyone else in the table who this newbie comes along and says, "Let's go fishing for half an hour."
Yeah. So just to be clear,
nice lunch.
That was your first ever D&D game.
Yes.
Yeah. You wanted to go fishing. There's a quick question from Kevin. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. How old are you? Just curious because you're impossible to read apparently.
Well, I'm intrigued as to what Kevin actually thinks how old I am. So,
yeah, do you want to guess in chat?
Yeah.
57.
Close.
That's close to my age then. 30 says Beluga. Okay.
Beluga's spot on.
23. Yeah, I would have gone with 23. To be honest, I it hasn't even occurred to me to ask or think about it. I don't think about people's ages.
No, I lie to you all. I'm 31 now.
Wow.
It was my birthday.
Oh yeah, it was your birthday recently. Yeah. So
I'm 31 now.
So what was it about D&D that made you curious to play? What is it that you think is the driving factor to wanting to get involved? Is it the social side or something else?
I think for me it's the escapism. It's the chance to be with kind of friends. So it's the social element as well, but it's the idea actually I can do what I want without judgment, without consequence, without I had a really horrid time at school. One of the things you'll notice about Aldri, he's very flirty. He thinks he's got himself a little boyfriend going on. And, one of the reasons I wanted to play is actually because no matter what old you're in, that's okay. And that's what I love about D&D and kind of these games in general, that actually that sort of identity thing doesn't matter. You can be who you want to be, and that's grand. It's refreshing.
Yeah. And do you feel like when you were heading into that first session in the pub with that expectation, during that first session, did you get what you wanted, do you think?
Yes, I did. I mean, I spent half an hour fishing. I mean, how much more escapism can you get? But no, it was nice. It was the teamwork. It was the listening, the planning, and just kind of really giving yourself over to a character. I became this elven ranger who enjoyed cooking. Every opportunity, every short rest we had, I was skinning wolves and fishing and cooking, and it was lovely. But no, perhaps not as fun for the fish.
No, definitely not. So it sounds like what really propelled you into turning up was your partner who encouraged you, found this website, and etc. etc. What was it about your conversation with them that you think led them to push you that direction?
Will, my other half, is very good at kind of finding things for me, because I complain a lot that I want to do things, but I do very little about them.
So do you think it was complaints and just wanted to shut you up? Yes, essentially. Okay.
And I play a lot of board games as well, and I think it was, if he's playing D&D, he's not going to ask me to play Carcassonne for the 5th time today. So off you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So after your first session, talk me through how you went from the one shot to appearing on my campaign. Because obviously I know from my side what those steps were, but how did you go from that one shot to the campaign?
Well, I think this is, for everyone who's kind of watching, this is really just a question to kind of big Simon up. Afterwards, I had a message from Simon saying, "Hey, I really enjoyed meeting you. I think you're a great role player. I'm thinking of running this campaign. Would you like to be a part of it?" So when Simon's asking me how it happened, he's really saying, "Tell everyone how amazing I am." So, Simon's amazing. We all know this.
I'd actually forgotten how it all happened. That's why I asked. I couldn't remember. It doesn't surprise me that I did that, but I have no memory of it. So you came to this one shot. You sat down with an Elven Ranger, which is a character that you were given, wasn't it?
Yes.
What was going through your head as you role played your first character?
I was pleased to have an elf. I don't know why I always wanted to play an elf. I think kind of going back into, books and things, Lord of the Rings, especially growing up, the elves are cool and sexy and talented and amazing. So I wanted to be an elf, so I was pleased. But in terms of what was kind of going through my mind, it really was how can I immerse myself as much as possible. Because that's what I wanted. I wanted to, really put myself into the game.
So in a way, we have the DM to thank for your initial enjoyment. Because if you go to a session and it's a bad one the first time you try, there's a good chance that you won't try again. And I've seen some stories on Reddit where people have gone, the first session I had was awful, and that was years ago, but now I want to try again. Like they literally gave up for a few years and didn't play.
And it's interesting that was my first game. I said I went the week before, and as someone who didn't know anyone, who didn't kind of know how it's doing, it was slightly odd at first, because obviously I couldn't just join in the ongoing campaigns, so I just kind of sat and watched. But in a sense, it kind of, I said, it's testament to the DMs. It's so engrossing that I just kind of sat in the corner for 2 hours, because everyone was so involved in their games. And at the time you kind of think, well, that's a bit, a few people said hello, but it was very much a focus. But actually, that's exactly what you want. Because, if everyone's, leaving the table to come chat to this newbie, have a drink, then it means they're not engrossed, they're not immersed. Whereas actually, everyone was so involved, so enjoying their time, that I very rightly became kind of a background spectator. So it was a bit quiet, and I went back the next week to play the game, and I could see why. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely recommend if you're setting up a community in real life, then it's a great way to get people to join and become involved in the campaign. So the way that Southwest RPG works is they advertise these one-shots, and all the DMs who are running campaigns at the time switch from doing their campaign to running a one-shot, so that as many new players can come in and try it out, and almost like interview the DM and the DM interviewing the player for who you want sort of in your campaign. It's quite a cool system. I hope it starts up again after the after lockdown. So in all this story, where did streams come in? Where did Dimension 20 and things like that come in?
Yes, I think this is another one of the reasons the other half kind of pushed me into playing. I don't watch many streams, to be fair. My friend from university, Ellen, is one of the presenters on Outside Xbox on YouTube, and I know they have Oxen Venture. So I used to watch her and her friends play, and kind of grapple up with College Humour when they started Dimension 20. I became quite involved with that. When I went in the mornings, kind of running on a D&D session, and I was kind of going, kicking on with our day. And it's like, we could, or I could see Merowyn turn into a cat and meow for 5 minutes. And he was like, okay, go play. Yeah, but I think it's been a way both to kind of learn more about the game and kind of see. I mean, it's one of the wonderful thing about Twitch, about kind of being able to watch campaigns. It's kind of ideas and like, oh, I didn't know that character could be played that way, or that's really interesting use of that spell or that action. I think as with literature, we kind of base what we know, what we do, on what's around us. So I think it's really important to be able to watch other people play.
And is there anything that, if you look back on, you would advise yourself to have changed in preparation for going into the one shot? I mean, it sounds like it's kind of almost the perfect experience, but yeah. Is there anything that you think could have been better, or that you would want to have done differently?
I think it would have helped if I'd actually looked at the handbook or some of the rules beforehand.
Right.
I suppose that's one of the elements of going into the roleplay section so heavily, is because I was like, oh, cool, 14 pages. I mean, it wasn't. It was very good. It was about 2 or 3 pages. I'll just go fishing. What dice is this? But I suppose that's with all new players. But I think it would have helped if I'd actually kind of learned at least one of the rules before going in.
Yeah, and so you had the one shot, and then apparently I invited you to play in the campaign, and then we started like a small session, wasn't it? It was you and another player. So the start of that was putting your character together and planning how you want to fit in with this campaign. Can you tell me a little bit about how it felt and what was going through your head as you were being introduced to this idea of, I'm going to be playing this character for a long time now in a campaign?
I think, and it's kind of the advice I'd give to any player, new or old, is a character is only as good as you can play it. So it's finding elements of yourself that you can put into the character, that, it isn't just acting, it's living vicariously through them. Because I think that's what's really important about a realistic character, is that they're realistic. There's parts of you that are part of them. So for my first character, it was kind of their approach to things in general. They had quite a soft, quiet approach. So for Aldri, it's the love of books and snobbery and the love of wine. find food.
For a second, I thought you said snoggery.
Oh no, just the snobbery. Yes, it's finding those elements that are, that are part of you that really can come out as part of that character, and I think that's the most important bit of preparation I could ever give to someone.
And I think I'm trying to remember when you were creating this character. I didn't sit down with you with that character, did I? I think you must have created the character at home. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any feedback you can give me based on the details that I gave you about the campaign? Because we had a session 0 in the pub, and a lot of people were there, and I think you were there for that. Is that right?
I honestly can't remember.
No, I can't either. There were a lot of people. There's about 12 people at this session 0. And I was like, oh, wow. Either I'm going to have to be really harsh and cut a lot of people and say this isn't happening, or I'm going to have to run 2 campaigns. So, yeah, Kevin, there wasn't 3, it was 4. Because I was running a little mini campaign with Matt and another player last year. Okay. So let's turn to Adalbear then. So I do remember sitting down with you and Mads in the pub, talking through the campaign and Adalbear.
Yes.
Is there any feedback you can give me on what you learned about the campaign in that session?
Not about the campaign, but something I learned about kind of you, and I think one of the things that makes this world so fantastic and you as a DM really responsive and really great is when going back to the first campaign, my first character, I kind of said I want to be this sort of character, and I invented a pantheon, and created a pantheon of gods, and I was like, could this work? And Simon just took it, and he developed the history around it. He developed how they fit into the world, and that's still kind of going through the campaign now. So I remember kind of Simon and Kevin talking last week about world building and taking kind of advice and ideas from others, and I think that's one of the great things that Simon does, is he kind of listens to what the players want and is able to build it, and that's kind of been further developed by Mads, who plays Ellie, who kind of built on that idea and developed it even further, and it's all part of the campaign now. So it's that element of, I had a part in that ownership of the world. I mean, that I say I take the ownership, and this is such a fantastic world, such a expansive history and knowledge and multiple ages. So I say I take ownership. I mean, like 0.5%. I can't take any credit from Simon. But it's nice kind of having that element of actually, as a DM, you're kind of listening to what the players want and pushing them in. And I think that's the thing I'm taking most from the campaign.
Interesting. Yeah, I've always wanted to try and make a player feel comfortable, and I think part of that is listening to what they want to incorporate, and sometimes that comes from nowhere, and can be a surprise, and sometimes it's the usual kind of stuff. But whether it's a surprise or not, I think it's always good to make everyone feel like they're playing the game as a group, and that as a DM you're not like it's your rule and nobody else's. It's not a dictatorship, it's a shared story, and it's important that everyone has a part of that story, I think. Meanwhile, Mr. Roberts is sitting there going, wait, Matt invented those gods? I don't think, well, maybe you didn't know that, I'm not sure. Hey, DM Bador.
Chat is, I can't see any messages, so if anything comes up, please do repeat it.
Oh, sure. No questions yet. I think everyone's been absorbed with what you're saying, but DM Bador's just joined. Just want to give them a shout out. I watched DM Bador's Baldur's Gate stream yesterday, which is pretty cool. actually made me want to get involved in that game. It looks good. Sorry I had to leave a bit early, but welcome. If you have any questions for myself or Matt on starting to play D&D for the first time, then drop them in chat, and I'll try and keep an eye out. All right, so what is the number one piece of advice that you would give a first-time player, apart from your advice about the character role? Somebody especially who's, say, watched a Twitch stream and then wants to like it's one of the most common stories ever is they've watched Critical Role and they want to play a game that's like that. Yeah. What kind of advice would you give a first-time player?
Yeah. So I think if you're going into a campaign, it would be, as I said, building a character that you want to play that has elements of yourself that will be easy to kind of demonstrate those. But kind of the first game ever, let's say it's a campaign or a one-shot or a taster sort of thing, I think the best piece of advice I could give is just don't be afraid to get stuck in. It's an RPG, it's a role-playing game. So role-playing, don't be afraid if you think you might look silly, because everyone's going to be doing the same thing. And everyone's here because they don't think it's silly, because they really enjoy the game. So don't be afraid to go fishing for half an hour.
And I think that's really good advice, because I know you're a great role player. So obviously there's different ways to play the game. Some will channel their character and be very close to a different character, and some will just concentrate on sort of hitting things or sneaking off or whatever. But as a role player, I think your advice is particularly acute, because I would say you're role playing first and foremost. Like that seems to be your first priority.
Definitely.
And taking on that role is quite a brave thing to do. And if you follow Matt's example, and just go fishing or whatever it is, then you'll find that the table responds to that. And other role players will want to be part of that.
And this is it. I mean, you're absolutely right. I know Simon obviously had played before. I think there are a few new people to that first one shot. I think there are a few veterans and people in the middle. But then I said let's go fishing, and everyone went fishing. There are a few people who did want to get their feet wet, so they were kind of throwing their spears and things, or shooting arrows into the water. A few people dived into the water to go swimming. And it's that idea of, as you said, Simon, rolling with it and really getting involved with other people's ideas. And that what makes the game so enjoyable for a player. It's not only kind of, as I said, kind of having DM take on ideas, but the other characters as well. And knowing that you're part of a world together. There isn't one sort of dictator.
Yes. And we have some questions in chat. So first question from DM Bador is a question for me. How do I maintain the level of NPCs in my head? As a fellow DM Bador is curious about my methods. DM Bador, I can't remember if you were watching when I was talking to Kevin last week. So I'm not sure whether you're asking the question because I try and keep them all in my head or not. So I have a weekly memorization process that takes about 3 days, where I know the NPCs that are likely to be in the scene, and I'm trying to get them into my memory so that I can roleplay them without looking notes up. How do I maintain the level of NPCs in my head? I think the important thing is that each NPC has to have a memory cue. They have to have a significant personality quirk that you're going to role play. They have to have a voice that you can remember, and they have to have an attitude that is going to show itself in most encounters, because those are A, they're the most important things for the player when they encounter them, but B, it helps you remember who they are as a DM. So I would try and keep those in mind. The way I get them embedded in my memory is by playing through conversations with the players in my head. So, for instance, I would pick a character and then have them talk to Adalbert in my head, and I know Matt's performance of Adalbert quite well, so I can sort of predict how Adalbert will talk, and I just run through some scenarios in my head, and that embeds the character. So yeah, there's a few memory techniques like that. Question from Kevin. Did you have any particular misconceptions about D&D? This is a question for you, Matt. TTRPGs before you started playing? That's a really good question.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think back. And so I think there's the one which I think, especially going back before the days of Stranger Things and kind of D&D being cool again, is the idea that, you know, the typical D&D player, you know, lives in their mother's basement, you know, wears a t-shirt 13 sizes too small with an irate message on the front. And I think actually Stranger Things has done wonderful things actually for the D&D community in kind of making it mainstream again.
Yeah.
And I think as well things like Critical Role and Twitch. But whether I kind of had that, I mean, obviously, if I honestly believed that, I wouldn't have gone along. But I'm trying to introduce other people, so I DM kind of special festive sessions for my work colleagues every now and then, and it's always the kind of I've heard about D&D, but I've never really played it, and it's kind of that you hear the trepidation in people's voices. What is this strange kind of sorcery? And you're like, no, I'm having a go, and everyone's loved it.
Are there any surprises in this journey since you started playing where you've gone, oh, I'd never expected this, or...
Honestly, I don't think so.
I mean, it's always hard. Yeah, no, it's always hard to rewind yourself back to how you were before you knew everything. So, actually, your interactions and all the people you've met, the kind of experience you've had, those are all the sort of things that you expected to have?
Well, I think so, because in a sense, I didn't really know what to expect. So things couldn't go against my expectations. I don't think I've met anybody who does live in their mother's basement. But, you know, actually, everyone I've met, they're from similar different fields of life. Doctors, engineers, scientists, you know, retail workers. There's a whole spectrum of people, and that's because it's a game that's open for everyone. Yeah,
I won't say their name, but my favourite person that's played in the campaign is a quantum physicist. An actual quantum physicist, which was quite cool. Okay, so a question from Kevin for you, Matt. Besides the amazing Adalbert, have you had any other character ideas that really stuck with you as ones you definitely want to play one day?
So the first, as someone who's always kind of played in Sam's campaigns, there is another character who I'm not going to go into too much detail of, which kind of existed in pre-lockdown meetups, and it'd be interesting to see how they kind of interact in this world. But otherwise, yes, I must say I'm an absolute fiend when it comes to spending time on Hero Forge, just putting together character ideas. One of my favourites is Hilda, who's a half-orc barmaid. Her weapon of choice is a frying pan, because, you know, she doesn't need anything else. I'd love to play her one day. and then there's a half bard, half druid elf, who, kind of the way I imagine it, can't beast form, but is essentially the Snow White of D&D. So it goes along singing, talking to animals, convincing things to do something. All these ideas.
I think playing a Snow White is interested. Great idea.
People interested, I'll put just a feed of all my character designs on Twitter at some point.
Yeah, you should do. Kevin wondered whether your half-orc would look a bit like Travis Willingham. I think it's not about half Sean Travis. Oh, it's Critical Role. He plays a... is it a half-orc or... Yeah, I think it's half-orc. Ford. Yeah, plays Ford. For both of you, question from DM Bador. Speaking of lockdown, how has that affected your play? Also, has D&D helped you get through those crazy times? Yeah, definitely
get through.
Yeah, how's it affected your play? I mean, we did sort of touch this earlier, but is there anything that's changed the way that you're playing a character?
I think, honestly, especially at the beginning, it was quite hard. I find socializing in general quite difficult at times, and I really do rely on non-verbal interactions, so eye contact, behavioural cues, tone of voice. So I find it really difficult to kind of read things, and as well as a person. I mean, it's one of the aspects of Annabelle that isn't like me. He's a lot more confident than I am. So at the beginning, I found it very difficult to kind of interject or cut in, kind of playing virtually, because I didn't have the thing to say. Just go. It's something that kind of through experience I've gotten much better at, knowing when I can just slide in there with a flirtatious snide remark. But there are definitely things I had to kind of get over at the beginning of playing virtually, and just the confidence to interject and navigating social communication.
Yeah. So I was running the campaign with the two Chris Roberts and Chris Harris online before the stream. So it's a continuation really of that. But obviously, same as Matt, after lockdown, this became pretty much the only sort of social hobby type activity that was with other people, apart from my partner, who I'm very lucky to have in the same building. So yeah, it's been very important, and I think that puts a lot of pressure on the event as well. I think in the past, D&D has just been something that I've looked forward to and enjoyed, and has been a massive part of my life, but there's been no pressure on it. It's just something I did for fun. And then suddenly D&D is basically the main social interaction that you have each week, that's for fun rather than for work. And then, yeah, I think that puts pressure on it, which it took a while to get used to, because you don't want pressure on a game. Like, you want to just relax. Luckily, our group is so chilled, and we have so much fun playing. Even when there's tense things in the story, we still have a laugh and enjoy it. So, yeah, it's been good. Yeah, I agree, DM Bador. I think that there's a transition if you've never played online. I think it's very weird. I've been playing online for 10 years or something, so it's been a lot easier for me. Question from Kevin: are there any other TTRPG systems you guys have wanted to play or still want to play at some point?
I'd quite like to play a game of the zombie side. So one of the things when we were playing in person, lots of some of the nasty guys we came against were figures from Zombicide that someone was using, and kind of like that looks like fun. So at some point, we'll all have to kind of get together and play a game of Zombicide.
Did you never get to play?
No, we didn't.
Man. Yeah. So basically, in the story, that Adalbert was not Adalbert, Matt with another character. There were a lot of zombies, and so Zombicide seemed like an obvious place to get miniatures from. And also, I figured if I carry Zombicide to a session and nobody turns up, apart from one person or whatever, then we can have a game of Zombicide, which actually happened a few times. So I guess, yeah.
Not with me.
Not with you, no. All right, cool. So I've got a final question here. What is the number one reason you would give to other people as to why they should try D&D?
Well, it's hard to kind of narrow it down. So I'm going to give one answer that kind of combines many because it's cheating and easy, and whatever. No one's going to call me out, and if they do, I'll ignore them. But,
you can say whatever you want.
I think the why you'd play is because it's fun. You're in a group of like-minded people who want the same fun as you, who want to build on the same world, the same ideas. You may all have different goals, but that's fine because that's how they interact and build on it. And it's just the idea that it's fun. It really is very, very fun.
No, I think that's probably the perfect answer. There's a question from DM Bador. What advice, Matt, would you go back and give yourself for getting started with D&D? I think I got it, DM.
Yeah. I think, as I said, spending more time at the beginning, getting to know how the game actually works. I do pride myself on being a good role player, but it would have helped if I spent a little bit more time reading the handbook, just knowing some of the extra dynamics for the first month at least, before you kind of get used to it and kind of build on. I imagine there's lots of, and what does this mean, Simon? Can I do this? Again, that's part of growing and learning. And we're still, all of us still a little bit cheeky at times, saying, "Can I do this, DM?" I'm just going to ignore the bit of the rules I may or may not have read, just to see if I can get away with it in the moment. But yeah, the advice I'd give is go in, with an open mind and an open heart. Be available to people, to the game. Know that it's a commitment. There's so much work goes in, not only as a player, but I mean especially as a DM, building worlds and history and languages and lore and cultures. It's amazing. I think. I mean, it's not advice I give myself, but advice I'd give to kind of, I mean, to myself, yes, but to everyone, is it is a commitment, but it's a fun commitment. And I think if you're not kind of willing to show the respect that a game of this magnitude really does require, then are you being unfair to the other players and to the GM?
Yeah, I agree. Off the back of that answer, I would say, as a DM, if I'm getting a new player joining, the best player that I could have is someone who is responsive and gives some of themselves in preparation for turning up. So when creating a character, if you've got a session in a couple of weeks and you've got 2 weeks to create your character, then don't leave it until the day before the session and send it to the DM. Try and give as much time as you can. I mean, we're all busy people, but try and give as much time as you can back to the DM, and if the DM has questions, which they always will have, then try and be responsive. And because in the end, the DM is trying to make the game fun for you. So the more you can respond and the more you can sort of help the DM understand what you want from the game, then the more everyone will get out of it, but especially you. So it's kind of in your own interests. But it's super helpful for a DM, because if you send questions or queries or just asking for a character from the player and you don't hear anything back for days or weeks, then you're just ending up with frustration and ignorance, because you don't know what to expect when the player turns up. So that would be my advice. But question from DM Bador for me: how much do you bend the rules for the rule of fun, or are you more by the book? How much do I bend the rules? So the rule of fun, I started as a DM in 1983, 4, something like that. I can't remember. It's so long ago, I can't remember. Anyway, I started DMing a long time ago, and as I mentioned on the stream that I did with Kevin, I had no books at the time. The first sessions I ran, I just ran with the idea of Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't even know what it was.
Internet as well, isn't it?
This was before the internet, yeah. So I had no books, I had nothing. So this idea of the rule of fun, or the rule of cool, or whatever, is something that I noticed turn up, 15 years ago, something like that, on forums and things. I think it's great. I think it's a really cool way of thinking about your sessions, and especially of stopping yourself being too pedantic as a DM. But predating the rule of cool is my rule of the world trying to be realistic. So there's kind of that can fight against the rule of cool sometimes. I always want to try and present a world that makes sense, and when the players do something, the consequences make sense. So that isn't always cool or fun. How much do I bend that? The players are playing heroes. They're playing like the main characters in a story. So the rule of cool, I think, applies because even though you want serious consequences, you also want the players' actions to make a big difference to the world. So I kind of try and balance those two things. If it turns out to be cool, then I always find myself like passionate about it in the session. I'm always like, yes, that's really amazing. But yeah, I'm sort of balancing two different concepts away from the rule of cool or rule of fun. They're related, but not quite the same. Kevin said, are you saying there's room for a new player to join? Well, Chris Harris's lovely layout, the overlay that he did for the stream, has 4 players at the bottom. So it depends on what you mean by room. There's no room on the overlay. Where do I knock out all the competition? Well, I'll let you know by Discord. I'm the same. It has to make sense in terms of physics and what's going on first. Yeah, physics is a great word. Physics are really important to me, and it's a big part of my construction of the world. All right, cool. So if there's no other questions, is there anything you want to finish off, Matt, by saying about your experience as a new player?
I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Thank you everyone for joining. Great questions as usual. Thanks Kevin, thanks DM Bador, thanks Beluga if you're still around, or did you fall asleep? And thanks Matt for sharing all of that with me and with the internet.
No, thank you for inviting me, not only today but 2.5 years ago. And it's been a wonderful ride.
It has been. It's a very special part of my life at the moment, so thank you for being part of it.
The only part of my life at the moment.
Great.